Cool. All right. So here we are again. We're back this time virtually with That's a Good Question podcast. This is episode 4, and I am honored to be here with Mr. Sean Mundy. So photographer, crypto artist, and all around just great dude. I think we can going to jump into it. We were talking previously about sharing our skills and our abilities online with I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Sharing our abilities and our skills online with our audience, and teaching as much as possible, as well as getting as much information, because we're still students as well as photographers and videographers, content creators. So I guess for starters, can you tell the people who you are, how long you've been in this space, and where it started for you? I'm curious to know, especially
Absolutely.
like where it started.
For sure, man. So I probably been shooting, it's 2021. I think I started shooting photos back in like 2007, 2008. I went on a school trip to New York City. I think it was in grade 9. Yeah, so roughly around there. My parents bought me this little kind of like, not a disposable camera, but it was like the kind of like camera you buy in like a convenience store, like a really cheap one. But it was just for me to like take photos with my friends kind of thing.
Yeah.
And from there on, I just slowly but surely became the guy that always had a camera on him. And I would take photos at venues, at shows. I eventually started working for a small website here in Montreal, taking photos and getting to see artists for free as long as I took photos for the website. So that was an awesome learning experience. I think if you want to learn how to use your camera, like take photos at live events, because it forces you to be like, you have to think like 5 steps ahead of like what someone's going to do, how the light's going to change, how you need to set up for it. So that really like taught me how to quickly set up. And now on the flip side, I do the complete opposite. Everything I do is super slow and staged, and there's no thinking on the spot in terms of settings. I very much know what I'm doing. But so from there, it just kind of went I started bringing my camera with me less when I was going out with friends, and using it more in the same way that a painter or a digital artist would do. So I go out into the world and I take images and I make images. I basically set a scene together, and then depending on the concept, I'll bring it back into Photoshop and either edit the hell out of it, or I'll just tweak a few things. But depending on the concept, sometimes it could be like 20 to 40 hours of work. So it really depends. But so I've been doing good work, I think, since like 2014. But I've been taking photos for well over 10 years now.
Damn, that's dope. No, you can definitely see the 10,000 hours, as they say, put into the
100%.
work. Yeah. So
I don't think I'm a master, but I've definitely put in my 10,000 hours.
yeah, and you can definitely see it, and I think a lot of people respect it in that space. Sure. I've seen the traction, via Twitter and of course online. And you did mention, we should mention that you're in Montreal.
Yeah, born and raised.
Cool. Okay. Have you ever lived outside of Montreal?
No, I've only ever lived here. I've spent some time in different cities. I've ironically seen more of the States than Canada. I spent like 3 months back in like 2014, 2015, just living with other photographers on the West Coast, in like Oregon and Washington and a bit of California. And so I've seen more of the States than Canada, ironically. But I like Montreal a lot. It's definitely a super unique place, because especially for me, I speak French, but my family is English. So I'm like Quebec inside of Canada is a subculture. Montreal inside of Quebec is a subculture, and being English in Montreal is a subculture. So I'm like,
wow, okay,
several layers separated. So like when someone's like, what's Canada like? I'm like, I don't know. I live in Quebec. Quebec is very different than the rest of Canada. And people go, like, what's Quebec like? I don't know. I'm in Montreal. Very different than the rest of Quebec. What's Montreal like? I'm pretty English. I don't really know. So yeah, but I still love the city. It's everybody, when I bring American friends here, I get to see it through their eyes and see like, wow, this is actually really cool. Like we have festivals all summer long, like music festivals, art festivals, like ridiculous concerts, and like the jazz fest. We have a comedy. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but we have an international stand-up festival every year until COVID. But Montreal is a pretty dope city.
That's dope, man. So actually, that brings me to my next question: is that growing up there? Because I always love to hear about the texture and the feedback that artists get from their environments. I'm really into architecture and sound design and stuff like that.
Nice.
But even from like what you're eating, you know, to what you grew up watching on TV, like that environment, did that shape how you shoot and, you know, what you shoot, the subjects that you choose to spotlight and the topics that you choose to talk about? Did that shape that a lot, or can you see that in your work?
I used to think it didn't. For the longest time, like I was convinced that I was kind of just I was just being inspired by art I'd see in galleries or on the internet. So for me, I never really looked at Montreal as a source of inspiration. But years later, like looking at my work, I realized how a lot of the architecture, actually, speaking of architecture, has inspired me a lot. Like one of the metro stations, which is like our subway system, that I spent a lot of time in my youth, is like, it's like this brutalist like bunker. It's this like 500-foot deep thing. And like as a kid, and if you see it every single day, you don't really think about it. But over the years, I've kind of been like, wow, this is actually gorgeous. And I love this kind of architecture. I love this style. And I've used it a few times in my photos. So I think it would be pretty naive for me to think that it hasn't had an effect, because there's a lot of spots in the city that, you know, it might look like a normal city, but then you go 2 streets over and there's some wild stuff. Like there's a historic part of the city, which looks very European. Then there's downtown, which looks pretty standard American. And then there's certain little pockets where that is one thing that's really interesting about Montreal too, and Canada as a whole, is that our funding from the government, we put a lot of it into the arts. So for public projects and things like this, like here in Montreal, for example, every single metro station, the design inside is from a completely different crew and completely different artists. So every metro has its own little vibe, its own kind of sense of scale and everything. Some metros are very small and tight, and then others will be massive and have sculptures everywhere. So they're definitely not the most beautiful in the world, but like things like that, I think just growing up in a city that has that level of commitment to art, even at a foundational, like what the government decides to put money into, I think that definitely makes a difference. And I think when you're younger, maybe you don't notice it as much, but growing up and like starting to reassess your inspiration, I couldn't help but notice that this definitely inspired me one way or another.
No, I agree. And I see it around Atlanta, you know, and, you know, New York, Florida,
100%.
California, like you see it in the art sectors in a lot of these cities. So that's dope, man. And to double back a bit, you said that you spent more time outside of Canada than, you know, you have in Montreal.
Yeah, I've seen more of it. I've spent more time here, but I've like, in terms of Canadian cities, I've seen like 4, and I've seen way more American cities.
Wow. So, and I think the, you know, you've been able to take that exploration because of a very important factor that you mentioned. And I hope everyone kind of grabs a hold of that, and that's bartering. Like bartering is so important, especially as a creative, as a content creator. And it has been used in photography and really any arts for a very long time. So could you speak on that? Like just, you know, from your first experience getting a camera and then being the guy that, hey, we'll let you in the club or the event as long as you just take these cool photos, because the camera guy is very important as far as creating the texture and context around whoever they're around. Well. Yeah, exactly.
Space or a new band or something, they have sick photos, you're more likely to go check it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think photography in particular has a really interesting place in the art canon, in that it's simultaneously really cool, but simultaneously the kind of thing that like any newbie could pick up. I think that's really cool. Like anybody can be a painter as well, but like really you can just go into a store, buy a camera, you're a photographer now, like even if you're trash. But I think that simultaneously what makes it really cool is that the barrier to entry is so low that if you really stick with it, you can make something of it. But yeah, for me growing up, like I said, if I wanted to, I could have easily been a portrait photographer. And I think portrait photography is gorgeous, and that like just going down the street and taking photos of people in their daily life, that could be really cool. But yeah, I didn't spend too much time doing photos in that style. I think between 2010 to 2014 was really like a slow like scaling off of that. It was less and less doing more documenting and using my camera for events and stuff like that, where I would get paid, and more personal expression and like I have an idea that I need to go out into the world to make. So I don't know in particular, I can't really touch on that too much, unfortunately.
No, that makes sense. And I think the most important part was touched on, you know, you create the
Gotcha.
context and the texture around these people or this thing that you're
For sure.
focusing on, and you can barter that as a skill and as a
Absolutely.
entryway to whatever it is you want to get into,
For
especially if you're
sure.
a new photographer, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's cool, man. I definitely want to touch base on we kind of went ahead now. We're talking about what you're currently doing, which is great because that's where I was going to segue. The pieces now, or you're focusing more, you're slowing down more. And I've seen that a lot of these projects take a shit ton of preparation.
Yeah, man.
Like from digging to, you know, like using smoke bombs
Yeah.
to like, can you touch on that? Like, how's that process? Is that therapeutic for you, or like that's really enjoyable for you to actually from start to finish, you're kind of hands-on instead of just editing
Sure.
and being in the back room?
Yeah, I think, I think there's something to be said about both approaches. I think there is something really cool about being able to build worlds entirely in your bedroom without having to go out into the world. Like 3D art, I think is so sick. I love it. But I also do think there's a really cool part just in even like as an experience of going out and doing this kind of bizarre stuff in preparation for a photo. I just think it expands, like you were saying, it takes a long time to prep. And when I'm doing it, I know I'm doing it for a photo, but it kind of, even when I'm not taking the photo, it kind of gets me in that headspace of like, oh, this is for that. So like in a week, I'll come back and I'll do this thing. I wouldn't say it's therapeutic necessarily, but it's a really nice, it's one of the few times in my life where everything else kind of fades away. And I might be stressed a little bit about like, oh, I hope this works out. And like, I hope the sun doesn't come out, or I hope everything lines up perfectly. But you can never really turn that off completely. But as much as that is turned off, I'm very much in the moment. I'm super focused on what I'm doing. And even if it's menial, like you were saying, like digging holes or something, or I don't know, doing something like that takes a long time, it's kind of, it adds an extra element to it, especially when you're working with friends and when you're working with other people. Like tomorrow I'm doing a shoot and I'm going to drive up north and we're going to go shoot in a lake, and I'm getting somebody to shoot underwater or to be underwater with a light and have somebody on top of the water. And it just makes for good memories. It makes for good experiences. And when the photo itself turns out really cool, it's a great story. I think it adds a bit to the piece. Not that I think you need to have that for a good photo. You could just take a snapshot and make an amazing piece of art. But when someone asks, like, how did you do this? What went into it? When you have all that story to go into, like, well, we drove 2 hours out of the city, we shot in this lake, I did all this prep. It just kind of adds to the world around the images and around the catalog in general.
That's dope, man. No, I agree. I think my favorite thing about artists um in any realm is the backstory. Like I
For
always
sure.
like being told stories. And the imagery in a lot of your art definitely feels like you have the room to come up with your own, but I guess I'm curious and I like to pry. So
For sure.
I wanna ask artists, like I like seeing how their brains work.
For sure.
Like what was the intent behind it, or
Absolutely.
whether it be just to have me think, or come up with my own. What was happening around the time, what were you guys doing, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So outside of your friends, speaking of people that you're working with, um, is there anyone you would like to work with, dead or alive? Like, who would you work with? Who would Sean work with? And if you could ask him one question that they had to be completely honest about, what would you ask him?
Oof, that's really good. That's hard. I think alive, the answer is pretty easy for me. His name's Nicholas Allen Cope. He's like, he's a younger guy too, but I discovered his work on Tumblr years ago. But he's like a master of like multiple genres, which for me is just like, you're above like a master at that point.
Yeah.
And what's cool about his work is that you can tell, like, he has a signature style that transfers through different styles. So if you know his work and you see his and it's completely different kinds of work. Like I found his fine art like conceptual type stuff, and it's very dark. And if you see his work and you see my work, you can definitely see it. But then if you look at his like his fashion work or his catalog work or his product work, they're completely different images. What's in the image totally different. But if you know his style, you can kind of see the thread. And that for me is like, that's like the making of like a well-rounded artist and like a master in general. So alive, definitely him. Not impossible. I think we spoke once in DMs and it like made my day. I don't remember, but
That's dope, man.
Yeah, no, I was super hyped. I'm pretty sure he answered me. If I know, I definitely messaged him at one point. I want to say he replied, but for Dead, that's trickier. But when I was just starting to get into like more concept stuff, I found this one guy, and I think everybody probably knows his work one way or another because he's done such incredible work. But his name's Storm Thorgerson. First of all, that's a badass name. His name's
Yeah,
Storm.
it is.
That's a hard name. It's a really cool name. He could have easily been like a musician or something with that name, but he did all of him in his studio. Storm Studios, also a really cool name. They did all of the like classic rock album art, like from Pink Floyd and like Led Zeppelin, all these like crazy setups where this is before Photoshop. So they really had to like get hundreds of people and like all of the setups and everything like that. I just have so much, I have respect for the production value of it. I don't necessarily love every single image he's ever made, but just seeing that level of production into a photograph, you see that with films. And I'm sure that there's that level of production with other kinds of photography, but in a much smaller scale. Like I'm sure for like fashion or for product, you probably have like a bunch of little things going on, but that doesn't really interest me as much. Whereas with his work, like I said, he'd be getting like massive scale, like he'd have this entire thing sectioned off and have like a crew of like hundreds of people. And for it's like a movie set for an image. And there's a photographer working today, very similar. His name's Gregory Crutzen. And I think I've heard him say he's like his budget for like a photo sometimes is like $100,000, which is ridiculous. Wow. But the images are like stills from movies. So it makes sense. He rents out like city streets and he gets like rain machines and everything. So it makes sense. But yeah.
I know it probably looks ridiculous too.
They're dope. They're dope photos. Yeah, they're dope. And what's cool is that you wouldn't like, if you don't know, it could have just, I think that's what's cool about it too, is if you don't know that there's a giant production, you can't really tell. It looks like he just managed to get the street empty with all the cars perfectly, but really he's placed everything meticulously. So that's what I think is cool about his work too. But so the question, what was the question again? What one question I would ask either of them?
Yeah, or if you could choose to ask one of them, like they have to answer very honestly and candidly, and they'll grant you this wish to answer whatever question you want to ask.
That's a really good question. Man, to get really real, I'd have to ask them like, do you ever feel fulfilled? Like, does it ever just, because it's like cliche, but it's so real. And even myself, like every time you hit that new milestone, you take like a second to appreciate it, but then you're already like looking to the next thing. And I think that's just kind of like the unfortunate nature of the human like experience. But it would just be really cool to have that kind of conversation with somebody who's very much like, you're leagues above where I am. Like, I want to know, does this ever go away? Does it ever really like do you really, I don't know. I'm sure the answer is no, but I would like to get their perspective on like their journey and everything like that. So just to see if really, if it is really, if I don't know, it's a really good question. I think that's my go-to though, because I think with a lot of artists in general, or even athletes and people like that, like when you hit that milestone, you're always just like, oh, all right, that's done. What's next? And that's cool, but you know, sometimes you got to like enjoy the moment, and I don't do that enough. So it'd be awesome to talk to people that are like legends to me. So that would probably be my question.
I think that's one, that's a really great answer. And two, I think that's how you create legacy. It's just not looking back.
I agree.
Once you can sit down and, you've created everything, and which is going to lead into my next question. Once you created everything that you wanted to put out in the world, I think then you can sit down and look back and really see the fruits of the labor that you've put in. But
for sure,
in order to make sure you hit that pinnacle, the top, you just can't indulge yet.
Yeah, not really. I think I'm trying to remember who said it. It was definitely a rapper. I'm trying to remember who said it, but comfort is too close to complacency or something like that, where it's like, you got to strive that balance where like, I'm too comfortable. I think you got to keep going kind of thing. And it's crazy to hear that from somebody who's like a millionaire type thing. But like, that's why I'm curious. Cause if like these guys, like I said, they're legends, like regardless of what anybody says, that's how I view them at least. Like, so if you've worked with massive clients, if you've done like the most iconic images ever, like you'll be dead and gone and people will be talking about your work for years.
Yeah.
Does that change the way you feel inside? Do you feel like if you died tomorrow that you're like, oh, I'm okay with that? Like you're not like scrambling to make new things? Like, cause that's how I feel always. I'm like, oh, that image is cool, but like wait till you see the next thing, or like I'm gonna be like, So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know. I
Legacy
think
is a good way of looking at it, though.
it is. I think that comes from the people around you. You know, you really know, and truth be told, as much as we say that, you know, we want to do the self-love thing, and you know, we want to do the let's get there alone and nobody else's opinions matter. You know, of course on Twitter, that's how everyone thinks, but
Yeah,
in
yeah.
in real life, we all need each other. And I think that
Sure.
comes from, you know, getting your flowers presented to you while you're still alive. It's like, no, like
For
your
sure.
work is amazing. This is how it impacted my life. This is what it's done for the people around me. This is what it's done for my career. You know, and you coming out and saying that about these people at some point, hopefully they see this and, you know, they get their flowers. So that's why I feel like it's important. And, you know, your podcast and you teaching people on your YouTube, and us trying to reach out to people and broadcast as much as possible the people that we think are cool and dope. We want to give you your flowers while you're here.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Sure. So my next question would be talking about legacy. If you were to leave one piece of yours or one, and it could be a piece you've already done or one you're about to do. If you could leave one, and that'd be the one thing that you leave forever, all your other work is gone, it's vanished. Thanos got it out of here. You know,
Damn.
and you know, you leave that one piece for the world to see and you know you by, what would it be?
Damn. That's a really good question. Usually the most recent thing I make is what I'm most like hype about. I made an image recently called Rust, and it's a figure, it's me, but like on a pile of rusted I can't think of the word for it, but it's the wires that you put in concrete to hold it all together. And I put myself on top of it, and I kind of contorted my body in a way to make it look like the wire, and then there's like these foggy mountains in the distance. I don't even know if that's my best piece, because man, that's a tough question. I'd have to, like, if I was gonna like seriously consider this, I'd have to have them like
all lined up,
like a conspiracy theory board. I need to have like hundreds of photos with the red thread, and be like, what about this one? What about this one?
Yeah.
But I think probably that one, just because it's the most recent. It's the one that I spent the most time with recently. Yeah, probably that. It's called Rust. I think it's actually the first image on my website. That's how much I was into it. I was like, this is what people will see when they land on my website.
That's dope. I actually really like that one too. So,
thanks, man. Yeah, no, that one took a crazy amount of time. And for me, I think what I liked about it most too is that I took the photo with like the lowest level of expectation. I was like, I have this idea, whatever, we'll shoot it. It's like the end of the day. We had done a bunch of other photos already, and I was just like, I have it, I'm here, I might as well do it. And now I like that more than like the last like 10 images I made, where like I had drawn them out and I was like, these are gonna be so good. So for me, it was just a nice little reminder that like you don't always have to work like that, and sometimes you make really good stuff when you don't work like that. So now I know every time I go out into the world and I have like a little idea, I'll be like, maybe shoot that. Maybe it's gonna be really cool. Actually, maybe it'll be the best thing you ever make. So I think that's my call. I would pick that image.
That's cool, man. And thank you for bearing that to the world. I know that's a pretty hard question. Sometimes
it's arguably the hardest question I've ever received in an interview.
No, that's cool, man. I appreciate you for, you know, bearing that to the world. Of course. And yeah, I feel like even in music, you know, I've heard artists say that, entertainers say that, like, yo, sometimes it's just the most random thing that comes out to be the one, you know.
Yeah.
And you have to just leave it to the world to choose, or, you know, leave it to the work afterwards to choose.
Music is crazy like that. Especially, I think that's one thing that's cool about photography in particular, or the way I work at least, is that it's very much me. Like I'm kind of like the director, but with music and stuff, there's so many other hands involved that like there's definitely people that are sitting on amazing material that could be their best song, but it's being held back by like label execs or managers or whatever, that like, that's like, I can't imagine being at that point in your career, like where somebody is stopping you from releasing your potentially best song in the world. That's
and you don't have your hands, you know, you have your hands from beginning to finish, you know.
That's it.
You're shooting. So
it's too many cooks.
Yeah, way too many.
Yeah, that's it.
Too many. No, man. Thank you. We definitely want to highlight what you have going on and what you have coming out. I know there's a piece dropping soon.
Yeah, on Friday I'll be dropping. It's not a new piece, but it's a re-release of like arguably my most popular image, and I wanted to kind of breathe new life into it and put it out in a different way as a one-of-one NFT on Super Rare.
That's dope. Okay. And so I've been digging around Super Rare, OpenSea,
Nice.
things like that. How do you feel about photography specifically in the NFT space? I know we talk a lot about graphic designers and graphic design, but how do you feel about photography in that space?
I think it's right now it's in a really good spot. There's been kind of a lull, I'd say, before like the last month or so. There's a lot of photographers in it. Kind of like we're all here, we're eager, we've been like waiting, and now that it's here, we're all just like go, 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 like put it all out. But yeah, the NFT space has been pretty dominated by like 3D and digital art in general, and so seeing photography and being able to be a part of this moment where photographers are getting their flowers, like you said, like I've spoken to so many people that have made more in the last 6 months than they've made in the last like 6 years doing photos.
Wow.
And the fact, yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely amazing. I think a lot of people, like in any market, I think a lot of people are they're getting disappointed, I guess, because a lot of people see the money in NFTs and they're like, oh man, I'm gonna sell out right away and I'm gonna make like $1 million. Like, probably not, dude. Like, chill.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing in general. Like, obviously there are some people that are gonna be disappointed, like I said, but then there's also gonna be people who make really good work and deserve to have their work seen and shared and collected. And like we were saying before with NFTs, like it's a really new thing, but
Yeah.
the royalties built in, like I'm sure you're familiar with this, but for anyone who isn't, royalties, the fact that like in the traditional art world, if I sell a print, that's done, that's it, no more. Even through a gallery, like you get your cut, that's it, keep going. Whereas with NFTs, like it's built into the contract where you buy something on the platform, be it OpenSea or Super Rare, that I will get royalties for life. Like if somebody decides to sell it, I just get a little 10%, 15% here and there. Like,
yeah.
And I really hope music kind of becomes the next wave, because I feel like it's much easier to make money as a photographer because it's a more tangible product that a business will need photos for their business, you know. Like if you sell houses, if you do anything, if you're a barber, if you're anything, you'll likely need photos.
Yeah.
Music for me is like the best art form, but it's valued the lowest, and I hate that. So that's why, like, I really hope musicians and producers, and I'm biased because I make music as well, but also I see every day, you'll see like people like, I've been in this for 10 years and I made like nothing, and meanwhile, I don't know, some random stuff's on the radio and you're like, this is trash. Like,
yeah. No, I agree. And it's interesting that you say that, because I see Kanye kind of going in that, I could see him pushing it in that direction.
The ownership talk, and that's it. Like, that's literally, you just have to frame it like you want to own your own stuff. You don't want any hands in your pie. Like,
and also just the creation of the content, you know, like with Pablo, he took it all down. He took the whole project down because he didn't like how it sounded, apparently. Then re-uploaded it with like different versions, and he's done that with Donda too.
I was just about to say, I remember I saw him post on Instagram about like Universal released Donda without my approval, and like that's crazy if that's true. That I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's wild. But the fact that he has different versions, that's literally something that's, you know, NFT worthy, to where
absolutely, yeah, because it would be cool to like have the version with Jay-Z on it instead of the baby or whatever. Like, that would be crazy, and be able to like compare them in the same way. Oh man, I can't imagine.
That'd be really trade cool. Them, you know, you can trade them.
Yeah.
You know, and now you have this digital asset just floating around the internet.
For sure.
People are trading and things like that. So I could see it going in that direction. I think
100%.
Once that happens, music will definitely kick the door down.
I hope it does. And like, he of all people, like you're saying, would be the dude to do it, because he's been talking about ownership for so long, and like especially the last few years where it's been like more and more in his vernacular, where he talks about like, why am I the guy that, like, you've put me in this box, I want to do more but you won't let me.
So, and we've seen it already with Tory Lanez, with ASAP 12, like they've actually put singles out and sold them for ETH and things like that.
Oh yeah, cool. That's awesome. Good for them.
So people are already in that direction. I think they're getting the hint.
Nice.
And yeah, man, it's cool to see how this goes. I know smart contracts would be the best way and the dopest way, you know.
100% takes the human element and like the weird backdoor, like none of that. Just
Exactly.
it's built into the contract. You can't back out of it even if you want to. So
Exactly.
yeah,
And you don't have to worry about a middleman, no one
yep.
cheating you. You can
That's
keep
it.
track of it, everything, you know.
100%.
So
Yeah,
it's beautiful, man.
it's really just the beginning. So I really hope they get their day because I think, like I said, I think music is just, it's objectively the best. I think it's like music, film, photography. Like they're super close, but music is like the best.
Yeah, yeah. That was my first love as well. So, and then
Yeah, same.
are you on the production side, or are you a singer
Yeah,
songwriter, or
I do
production?
a bit of everything. I actually come from a family of like musicians. My dad is like a mean bassist. Like he plays
Really?
like 2-3 hours every day. I grew
Oh,
up listening to like Motown type stuff because of him. Like in our car rides, it would just be like every like artist in that genre, like really classic music. It would be
yeah.
like Motown or classic rock or whatever. So yeah, I play a lot of instruments. I do some production stuff as well. Not as much as I'd like to because photo stuff takes up most of my time, but I also don't prioritize it. So that's my problem.
Yeah. No, no,
Yeah,
that's cool, man. I always want to know what people are listening to, especially growing up. Like that creates the texture and context around how they express themselves now. I think
for sure.
subconsciously, a lot of that leaks out, and we don't know until either someone tells us or
You
you know,
look back.
yeah, we create something, and then years later, you're like, oh shit, okay,
Hmm.
I know where that comes from. So that's really cool. Who are you listening to now these days? Like when you're creating, do you listen to music or you have a specific playlist? Um, like who are you listening to now?
For the longest time, I was not listening because I grew up listening to, like I said, I listened to a lot of like classic rock and Motown stuff growing up. And then when I became like a teenager, I started listening to a lot of like metal and like heavy rock type stuff. And then I kind of like, I go in cycles very much. And then
Hmm.
there was years where I didn't listen to any of that. I listened to only like ambient music and electronic music. And lately I'm getting back into rock and stuff though. So for me, I'm listening to a lot of bands that they do a bit of everything. I'm kind of bored of bands that do one thing or artists that do one thing. So there's this one band I've been really into called Sleep Token, where
Hmm.
they have this vocalist that kind of ties everything together, and they'll have some songs where it's like dark R&B, but then like the guitars and drums will come in at the end, and it'll get like pretty intense. But then there's some songs where it'll be like a pop ballad,
Hmm.
and then there's some songs where it's just like pure like heavy like incredibly down tuned guitars. So it's just a really nice sonic palette where it's very much like not the same thing over and over, even though you can tell, kind of like what I was saying before about Nicholas Allen Coe. There's like a thread that ties all of their music together, and I'd say it's the vocalist. And
Hmm.
I've been listening to them a lot lately, kind of on repeat, and mostly a lot of bands like that. Trying to think of what else I've been listening to. So
I definitely need you to send me that band.
yeah, I will. I
Because that
honestly,
sounds cool.
I think they're the perfect entryway into like heavier music for people as well. So like if you don't listen to that kind of music, like they're a good like a little sprinkling of like some heavy guitars and stuff, you know. But like it's beautiful at the same time. Like there's some songs where it's like they have choir sections where there's like 9 vocals stacked on top of each other, and you're like,
What?
I'm in a church right now. Like this is and there's no instrumentation for 30 seconds. Everything will just stop, and then the vocals will come, and you're like, it I think a lot of music is very passive the way we listen to it, whereas with this,
Yeah.
because it's so varied in the palettes and it goes in and out, it forces you to go like, whoa, did they just do that? Hold on, put it back. I gotta like re-listen to that, and then it forces you to listen and you notice. And I
Yeah.
don't know, I'm just a big fan of like meticulous intention in music, and I think a lot of music, unfortunately, is really just kind of like verse chorus done. Like
Yeah.
I love stuff like that. I love a lot of stuff like that, but like you can tell that they didn't sit there for hours. Like, how can I make this a beautiful piece of art?
Hmm.
And the few artists or bands that do that, I gravitate towards, because even if I'm not like vibing with their most like recent music or whatever, I'll know that they have that in them, and that I want them to do more of that
Me too. Those are the artists that I'll check for.
for
Like
sure.
that's a great way to describe it, and it
Yeah,
forces you to pay attention.
yeah.
Those are some of my favorite artists because I've kind of tapped out of hip hop, rap. I don't even check for most of those artists.
Okay.
Last few years, maybe, and I'm
I
listening. You know, now I'm listening to weird shit like Japanese noise and
oh nice,
ambient music, and
cool man.
So I vary, and I also go in cycles and waves. Um, but I love shit like that. That's where, you know, it's really intricate and like you have to pay attention. The textures differ, they move, they change. So that's really cool.
Sick. I'll definitely I'll send you Sleep Token. But
Yeah.
To piggyback off of what you were just saying, Kanye actually has a really good line in an interview. I'm pretty sure it was him, at least, just because I thought of it when you were saying it, because we were talking about him before. But he said in an interview where he's like, I like songs that have car crash moments. And I think that's like the best way of putting it, where like
Yeah.
you just completely throw the song out. You're like, we're doing something else. Same song, but like
Totally
changing
different
it up.
direction.
I love that, because most people, like, I remember showing I was showing a friend of mine who makes really good music a thing I wrote, and he was like, you really like bridges. And for me, a bridge is like a no-brainer, because it's a little break from what you're used to. But so much music now, like a bridge is not even really there, unless if it's more experimental or something. But it's just like verse chorus. And if I know everything that's going to happen in the song in the first 40 seconds, that's kind of boring. I don't know. It's like you were saying, it's less I don't know, less intention, less artistry, I'd say.
Yeah, it's not as intriguing.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a chords listener. Like I love chords within the first like 20 seconds. If the chords don't hit, I'm like, all right. And that it's great because that also causes you to skip. And you know, they have that meme about you know, or that quote about, you know, I'm the song that you skipped, but found out later that it was fire.
Right.
So some songs you'll come back or you'll hear it somewhere else and you're like, yo, what song is that? And they're like, oh, this is this. And it's like, oh shit, I've been skipping that song the last 30 times I've heard it because of the first 10 seconds. Yeah. And then you go back, you know, and it gives you a whole new experience. So
for sure.
No, that's cool. I listen to music with intent, and sometimes I listen to it, you know, it's just a backdrop to life, and not as intentional, just for mood or vibe.
For sure. Something upbeat, some lo-fi, chill, hip hop type thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely, if I'm cleaning, that's like my go-to. Just I want to feel happy. Like, so I'm just gonna clean and listen to that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there are different types of listeners, and it's cool that we can point them out. You know, more and more people being able to point them out and see them.
I think so.
But thank you, man. This has been cool as hell. This has been cool.
Man. Thank you so much again for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. We're honored. At some point I want to definitely pull up to Montreal, Canada, or meet you around here. And we actually have a backdrop and, you know, a cool
in person.
Yeah, like a cool cool lifestyle thing going on where we can shoot it in person. So
yeah, man, that'd be sick. Let me know if you ever do. Hopefully COVID chills the hell out.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Speaking of which, how did you get through that? Like how 2020 was the beginning of this? Like your work is fairly dark. You know, which I love because I'm a pretty dark
about it.
Yeah, so I love it. But did it change like over time? Did you come to discover anything during that time? Were you on lockdown alone? Like how was that?
I think I spent like the majority of my lockdown either alone or like chilling with my girlfriend. And I work from home now. And so I'm kind of a lab rat to begin with. I spend most of my time indoors. So it didn't change too much about things, but obviously I didn't get to see my friends. I didn't get to see my family as much. It limited me in the sense that I wasn't able to bring people to go to a place or do anything like that. It was very like, what can I do alone in my bedroom or my living room? And but at the same time, I have like the way I come up with my ideas, I'll have like sections where I'll be like, okay, these are indoor shoots, outdoor shoots, like winter shoots, summer shoots, water shoots. So I just kind of checked off a bunch of living room shoots that I was able to do at the time. And unfortunately for us, our winters are brutal. So even if COVID wasn't a thing, I probably wouldn't have done much outside. It's very real about the Canadian winter thing. I like you said, my work's already pretty dark, so it didn't really inspire any new themes or anything in my work, but it definitely was a wake-up call that like things can change like that. And I definitely need to just do my own thing and make my own path and depend on as few people as possible. So that was definitely a wake-up call in that sense.
That's good. So you got to carve out your own independence and doing
working towards it every day.
Yeah, but also, you know, I think once we could come back out and, you know, join our comrades and family and friends, it kind of grew an appreciation for, you know, camaraderie and just, you know, creating together. And
Yeah.
I think that low barrier of entry that you were talking about before is just you get quirky new ways and new things coming out of this art form that you chose to
Absolutely.
to go
Yeah,
down.
there's something special about doing stuff in person. Like it's amazing what you can do over email and text and DMs and voice video chats, but like there's nothing like actually having someone there be like, did you mean like this or like this? Like I don't know. It's like the actual back and forth, like non-verbal communication like that it's crucial. So yeah, once the city opened back up and I was able to kind of chill with friends and like work with people in person, it was definitely a relief in that sense. I didn't feel as restricted either with what I could make.
Awesome, man. Where can the people find you? I know we've mentioned your YouTube. We definitely want to, get people to the channel.
If you just my website is seanmundyphotography.com. You can just either Google my name. It's SeanMundy. It'll probably be written in this video. On Instagram, my handle is Sean J Mundy. Sean Mundy was already taken. On Twitter, it's Sean Mundy Photo, and on YouTube, if you just look up Sean Mundy, you'll find some of my stuff. And I definitely need to get back on the YouTube grind. I've been slacking hard with that, but so many things to juggle at the same time. Putting out a weekly or monthly video is pretty challenging when you're doing a lot of stuff, but it's too much of an excuse. I got to get back to it.
Hey, man, we're right there with you. We're starting from the bottom. We're building our attraction too. So
YouTube is a hard place to grow on.
Yeah, so I think after I want to say someone said after the 60th, like once you get past a certain threshold, that's when it kind of booms. Okay. And everyone just goes back into your back catalog and that grows too.
That's the goal for me. Like I want that to be like, I like the idea of discovering something and then knowing there's a lot to look at. Like if you find a show that you love and there's already 4 seasons of it, you're going to destroy that. Whereas if it's somebody or an artist or something, they put out one song, you're eagerly waiting for the next one. That's also just a lot of pressure for them. So
yeah, exactly.
Makes more sense to have a catalog, like you said.
Yeah, man. And it looks like you're already getting to that point. People are stealing your handles on social media and probably going to resell it back to you once you get,
And that actually happened with my for music stuff. I Modes is my producer name for like certain kinds of music, and I messaged the person who has the Instagram, and it's some like teenage girl, and I was like, hey, so I make music under this name. Could I have this page? I'll give you like $100. She's like 150. I'm like, are you serious? She's like 200. I was like, what? She's like trying to finesse me. I was like, all right, screw you. I'm just gonna keep my current name. Like,
yeah, I mean, hey, man, the world's about negotiations. Everything's negotiable.
It's very true. I respect the strategy. Just didn't expect it.
Yeah, that teenage girl grabbing handles and reselling it. It's crazy.
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the world we live in now. I think after Beeble, I want to say what's his name? He's a pretty famous NFTer now. Like he's created digital art that sold for millions, but he's like 13.
He opened the door for sure, especially with the Sotheby's, Christie's stuff. Like that's why I work with a gallery. And as soon as that happened, I was like, I sent this to my gallery. So I was like, you need to look into this. This is very real. This is very serious. This is not a wave. This is not a trend. This is staying. If these giant institutions are like signing off on it, you should be looking into it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
people's
crazy.
And I think, like you said earlier, people are thinking that just jumping into this space will mean there's a shortcut, but no. If anything, you have to put more work in, and the reason why he could sell the way he sold is because he's been doing it for so long.
He has an insane credibility, like especially in that community of 3D artists. Like he's inspired so many people. Like you can't not inspire that many people if you've been doing it for that long. Even myself, like I don't do that, but just seeing that work ethic is like, this dude pumps out a piece every day, or he was pumping a piece every day, and it's topical. So he's not like making 10 and posting one the next week. It's like, this thing happened in the news, I'm gonna like run to my computer and make it in like an hour and a half and post it. And it's like, it's crazy.
And the details are ridiculous.
No, he uses assets for sure, but like the fact that it's impressive. It's very impressive.
Yeah. Well, we can nerd out about this shit all day. But I know you have things to get to. Our audience and consumers have things to get to. So thank you again, man. This has been cool. We definitely want to do this again. We're going to keep up with the work. Please keep doing great work. We want to give you your flowers
for life
over here.
Appreciate it, man.
And until next time, man, thank you.
Thank you.
Peace.